Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday, May 19th. Hope you're having a great day. Beautiful Chamber of Commerce weather today. Joined now by Alec Busse from thehoosier.com, who has been out and about getting all the tidbits on Indiana recruiting, Big Ten, whatever's going on out there. Last week was that in Dallas for the EYBL with tons of recruiting action going on down there. But right now, Alec, a little scuttlebutt about Caleb Love having committed to Michigan, but ironically, some of his credits from North Carolina would not transfer. Therefore, he is not allowed to enter Michigan. Not sure if that would have the same impact at Indiana, but because we know that Michigan's had that issue a few times before with guys not being able to get in to school there. But then the first question is Caleb Love an addition that Indiana would want?
I think it's a question that a lot of people are still asking. I don't know if it's something that anyone has a concrete answer to at the moment. I did some digging around yesterday and wasn't able to find any concrete answers, even from like the Mizzou side, which is another program that was really interested in Caleb Love the first time around in the transfer portal. Sounds like Mizzou might be interested. Sounds like they may not be interested. It sounds like the same thing from Indiana's perspective, I think, from what I kind of understand. And I think some of that might just kind of be they're trying to do their homework now and see if Caleb Love can get into Indiana, like you said, as a transfer, or if he can't get into Indiana as a transfer, because there's no need for Indiana to waste their time and energy on Caleb Love trying to get to Indiana if it's not going to become a possibility. So I think we'll kind of see with time, but certainly it's an interesting idea for Indiana. To be honest with you, Jim, I don't necessarily think I would do it if I was Indiana. I'm not someone who is a Caleb Love believer. I never really have been. He was awful his freshman year at North Carolina. His sophomore year, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't necessarily good. And then this past season, his junior year at North Carolina, he was quite awful. And he obviously has been involved with some rumors about not being the greatest teammate, not being the greatest locker room piece, all those different things. Certainly it has really big hit potential where if he comes in and he makes shots, he's a good catch and shoot guy like he was his sophomore year, where he's in like the 94th percentile as a catch and shoot guy. It certainly would work for Indiana, I think, but there's also the huge bust potential where, you know, he's not making shots. He's putting up a bunch of bad shots like he did this past season in North Carolina. He's commanding the ball. He's not passing to open teammates. He's a gunner. And those are things that don't always jive well when you try and bring in a new piece to a team. So I think we'll tell in time if Caleb Love is something that Indiana ends up adding via the transfer portal or not. But it's certainly something that is worth monitoring.
Well, and then you have to look at the fact of having a ball-dominant player already in the fold, like Xavier Johnson, who will be controlling things. So that already sounds like a battle that would be coming up and something that you don't need when you've got the guys below them and around them. But again, that's to be feted out in with the coaches. Corey suggests that they're going to wait until the combine or draft, because there are a ton of guys already in the portal. There are guys that are in the draft that are going to be available. There are a lot of availabilities, and my stance on this for Indiana now is before they were chasing everybody for those spots. Now they are in a different position. They're in a driver's seat. They're going to be in a position where there should be guys wanting these spots now, because now it's kind of coveted from what they have built from a roster standpoint. I can't think of a lot of guys that would not want that final to be on that spot on Indiana's team with the roster they currently have.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see if Indiana even fills that last scholarship. You talked about like the fit aspect with Caleb Love and already having one or two guys who can handle the basketball. Obviously, that includes Xavier Johnson. I think Trey Galloway showed a little bit last year that he's capable of that in spurts. You're obviously bringing in two guards in this 2023 class with Gabe Cupps and Ja'Kai Newton, who can both handle the ball and kind of facilitate the offense, more so Cupps there than Newton. But it's kind of become common for coaches to leave a scholarship open just because there's not really a need to carry 13 scholarship guys. You end up not playing 2, 3, maybe 4 of them very much to begin with at all. And then they end up leaving and entering the transfer portal. So it's kind of a wasted scholarship. So I think if the perfect guy is out there or Indiana finds somebody that certainly fits what they're looking for with that last spot, that's an addition that they would make. But I think it's something that we still have to kind of see if it does get filled, or maybe they'll leave it open and they won't fill it. I think if they do make an addition, I think it'll be interesting to see what kind of player they do look to add. I would add more shooting because right now you're kind of banking on a freshman to still make shots with Mackenzie Mbako, who, on the high school circuit in the high school game, he really showed an ability to make shots, but that doesn't always translate the greatest thing to college for some kids for some reason. The game's faster. The spacing isn't as great sometimes. So you kind of have to gamble a little bit on a high school kid making shots, and certainly Mackenzie Mbako is capable of that, but he is an incoming freshman, and then there's still some concerns about other guys being high-volume shooters. So if they are able to fill that last spot, I would expect it to be somebody who is a proven high-quality shooter at the college level, because I think that would really kind of elevate this Indiana team a little bit more and maybe put them a little bit closer to the likes of Purdue or Michigan State in a Big Ten title contenders conversation.
Yeah, well, Michigan State kind of stands alone at the top right now for me, but with the addition of Mbako, Indiana to me already stands at least side by side, if not ahead of Purdue for next season. I'm just not impressed by with what Purdue does. I think what they did last year was an anomaly, and the people that didn't get it figured out, like Indiana, will get it figured out. But that's another discussion for another day. Last week in Dallas, the EYBL event was going on. You were down there covering that for the Hoosier. A lot of names down there that Indiana is interested in, a lot of targets, and a lot of attention being paid. People like Dylan Harper, when Mackenzie Mbako made his commitment known. I know he made comments to rivals Rob Cassidy that he already committed. It was Indiana, right? He goes, I knew it. I mean, he didn't tell me or anything. I just assumed it was Indiana because Mike Woodson is going to put him in the best position to succeed and get to the next level. That's coming from a guy who is one of the top targets for next year. And that's exactly, if you're an IU fan or whatever fan you are, that's what you want to hear from a recruit.
Certainly. And I think one of the things that I really heard when I was down there in Dallas was the involvement that Mike Woodson has in the recruitment of kids, which I think is a little bit unique. A lot of times around the country, you see college coaching staffs, the assistant coaches really lead the recruitments of kids. Then the head coach comes in late, and the head coach is the one who kind of seals the deal when a kid's on an official visit, or when the coaching staff is kind of really pushing for a kid. I kind of learned that Indiana does it a little bit differently. Mike Woodson's involved with the recruitment of a lot of different kids. Dylan Harper, you mentioned, he's involved there. Austin Swartz, someone else he's involved with. He's involved with Jaden Mustaf, another guard from North Carolina area that Mike Woodson's kind of involved with on the recruiting trail as well. So I think that's kind of cool. I think it's kind of unique. And certainly we've learned in the last 2-3 years that Mike Woodson's a pretty proven and successful recruiter. I think having a staff helps him in that area, obviously, but Mike Woodson's shown that he's got the ability to kind of step into a recruitment and really seal it for Indiana, and that's valuable to have a head coach who can do those things.
Absolutely. Who were some of the guys that stood out down in Dallas, and who in your conversations with them, how did those go?
Yeah, to me, the most impressive player by far was Dylan Harper. He's obviously a top 5 ranked kid in the class of 2024, which isn't regarded as being a super highly touted class, but Dylan Harper was really impressive. He's a left-handed guard, and he's certainly dominant with his left hand. He likes to go to his left, but his right hand is pretty capable. He's really good at getting to the rim. He can finish in the paint. If he gets a favorable matchup against a smaller guard, he will look to post him up on the block, which I think is something that is pretty unique for a guard who's 6'5", but he's got a good shot as well. He can pull the trigger from beyond the arc, even when a hand is in his face. But defensively, he's really tough. He's really impressive there. He's got active hands, forced a couple turnovers, a jump ball as well in the game that I watched him play. I fell in love with Dylan Harper's game. So he is a guy that I think Indiana should really push for. Harper is from the New Jersey area. Rutgers is believed to be the favorite right now in his recruitment. And that would be the second 5-star that Rutgers has been able to land under Steve Peichel. So that would be a big get for Rutgers, but Indiana's kind of pushing. He's also got, I believe, Auburn, Duke, and Kansas along there in his top 5. So some good competition for Dylan Harper. But like I said, Rutgers is perceived to be the favorite, but I don't think a decision will be made until after Peach Jam, so later in the summer, potentially for a decision there. Austin Schwartz is, like I said last week on the show, a player who I really like. He's been one of the best players on the EYBL circuit all summer. He's probably a top 5 or top 6 scorer in the entire circuit. He's averaging about 19.5 points, I believe, this summer for Boo Williams. He is a lights out, high volume, really consistent shooter, shooting about 39.5% from beyond the arc in EYBL. He made 6 of 7 for Boo Williams in their win over Paul George Elite, which was ironically right in front of Paul George, the actual player, because Paul George was there behind the bench watching his team play. And Paul George pulled him aside or said something to him in the handshake line, which I think is really cool for these kids when the NBA guys are there to have an NBA player kind of say something to them in the handshake line or pull them aside between games or whatever and give them a tip. And I know Austin Schwartz was really grateful to hear that and really took the advice well. But Schwartz is someone who I still think needs to improve his consistency off the bounce as a player, but he flashed a good bit in some other games getting to the rim. Got to work on the left hand, but the right hand is pretty effective there. He said that that's an area of his game where he's really trying to improve right now and finishing through larger players. And then there's some other guys as well. Obviously, Liam McNeely is someone that I think Indiana fans know pretty well. I don't think Liam McNeely is necessarily ever going to take over a game right now. I don't know if he's a good enough athlete to do that, but he's a really complete player. I don't think there's any one skill that he's elite at, but I don't think there's any one skill that he's quote unquote dragging in, I guess you could say. He's a solid shooter. He's a good rebounder. I think he could be a little bit more physical with his box outs, but he is someone who certainly has an intriguing game. I'd be intrigued to see if Liam McNeely is the type of kid who is really highly ranked and goes to the NBA draft in 2025 as a one and done talent, because it's not a super highly ranked class of 2024, is it? Or if he's someone who stays in college and really kind of polishes his game a little bit more. But McNeely is obviously someone that
he's certainly, I don't see him as a one and done. And even though you make a great point with that being, man, if there was ever a year to try to make that happen, that would be the year. I'm just not sold that he is, because now you're gonna fairly or unfairly make the comparisons to Mackenzie Mbako, because that's pretty much the same position. That's a position that he would fill, but I don't know that that skill level is definitely not at the same place. Which again, that may not be fair, but that's the level that Indiana has to rise to now. The level of recruiting that Indiana has to rise and stay at, in my opinion, to maintain what they're trying to build with this momentum and that level of players. But yeah, that's going to be something to see as continue to watch.
Yeah, and I think Texas is another school to really watch for McNeely. He's from Texas. He took an official visit, I believe, recently to Texas. Maybe it was an unofficial. I know he was in Austin for a visit. He told me that he really enjoyed it down there. He said that the Moody Center, that's where Texas plays, was really impressive. He called it like an NBA gym. And as someone who has been there and seen the Moody Center, it's hard to disagree with him. The Moody Center is pretty sweet. It's brand new, several $100 million, I think, facility. It's an awesome arena. So Texas is certainly one to watch, but I think he's kind of waiting to see how teams play this upcoming season. He seemed to kind of want to observe how Rodney Terry plays things out at Texas's first year as the head coach full time in Austin. And then he also mentioned to me too that I think he wants to see how well Mackenzie Mbako plays at Indiana this year. He talked about how his goal is to get to the NBA, obviously, as it is all these kids. And he talked about how he was able to do, how Mike Blitzen was able to do that with Joe and Hood-Schifino, but he wants to be able to see it kind of done a little bit more so, I guess, with some other kids before he really kind of commits or signs on to play for any specific team. So I do think the Liam McNeely recruitment is one that Indiana sits well in, but I don't feel like a decision is coming too quickly.